First question today is from Becky. Has the idea of a downtown splash pad ever been discussed? Actually, yes, it has. In fact, we'd recommend you watch our city council meeting on Monday night or Monday afternoon. It starts at 4 o'clock. We do stream those meetings on our YouTube channel. One of the agenda items is a presentation of a redesign of Scarborough Alley and the town green. And one component of this is a downtown splash pad. So please watch that meeting and be informed. Our next question comes from Christine. Why is Highway 548 patched like a checkerboard? And there's some more information here. It might be helpful to understand the ownerships of the road in Horry County and the state in general that may help you direct your concerns to the appropriate entity as the roads are concerned. Roads are owned primarily by 5 different agencies here, and the first one being the local city streets, the county streets, state roads, and then federal highways. And then finally, there are some private roads here in the county. If a road is a number, such as Highway 548, it's usually either a state road or a federal highway. 548 in this case is a state road, therefore the appropriate entity to ask is SCDOT, and 548 is also not in the city, so we are not looped in on any of the construction activities on that area, so I really have no good answer for you, but to relay you to SCDOT. Sue asked a question about new grocery stores in the area, and I think I've answered this one before. If you haven't watched all of the videos for Ask an Administrator, feel free to go back through our YouTube channel, take a look at some of those, and a lot of the questions that are asked this week are previously answered, so I'm not going to go through them again. Just go back and look at some of those earlier ones and stay informed. The next question is from Pat. What's going on where all the land is cleared at 701 and Adrian Highway? Pat, we're sorry, this area is not in the city of Conway. The city may expand pretty far out, but this is a little bit further than we go. Our next question is from Bonnie. Bonnie asked, the land is being cleared on Hemingway Chapel Road. Are we going to have another development going up in our area? We're not sure exactly where along Hemingway Chapel you're referring to. There are several new developments that have been discussed in this area. It also will be the site of the Perimeter Road project, although we're a long way away from that starting. And that being said, there was a comment later on this question that the property was just timbered, and that could be the extent of it for the time being. Horry County is a very popular place for the silviculture industry. That's tree harvesting. It's been one of the staples of our agricultural industry for generations. So it could be that. A lot of the silviculture in this area does lead to development, and we know development is coming to the Hemingway Chapel area, but specifically which site you're talking about, we don't know. The next question is from Deborah. Is there a spot on the beach where I can take a handicapped person and then get as close to the water as possible? Deborah, I'm a big fan of the state park. They do have some handicap accesses, but this is not a question I can answer. Conway does not have a beach right now. Michael asks, why does the city of Conway have control of ponds in subdivisions? Michael, except for in a very, very small number of instances, the city does not control the ponds in a subdivision. We are not in the pond maintenance business here at the city. That being said, the ponds in subdivisions are crucial to the function of the stormwater system within those subdivisions. The specific question you asked about, I believe, was in Shaftsbury Green. That subdivision is not in the city, so we're not sure exactly what issues you're facing out there, but again, usually the ponds within the city are owned by the HOA and not by the city. Vincent asks, is there a possibility of a decent supermarket or food market on Highway 90 between 22 and 501? Vincent, again, we've talked about grocery stores, not only in previous ones, but a little bit today. And the area you're asking about is not in the city limits either. I'd love to be able to answer questions about the whole county, but really my knowledge right now is pretty limited to the city limits of Conway. One of the administrators of the Facebook group, Conway, South Carolina Residents, is Tina Camp. Tina asked a couple questions this week. The first one is, are there any grant programs available to someone who wants to start a business in Conway, mainly in downtown, and she'd love to see some of the empty stores revitalize and thrive. Tina, this is a fantastic question. We get this quite often. We do not offer grants per se. We offer a number of incentives for different types of businesses and different areas within the city. On the screen, we'll have a list here of some of those incentives, and if you want more information, please contact us. Our planning department administers those incentives. Conway Downtown Live is one of our nonprofit agencies here in the city. They work hand in hand with the city, and they offer a number of grant programs for businesses. I'm not the right person to ask on that, but if you'd like to contact Conway Downtown Alive, they do offer some incentives or some grants. I also want to take up this moment to clear up a prominent misunderstanding of our downtown, and that is that there are a lot of empty storefronts. There used to be. A decade ago, we had a lot of empty storefronts, but in the last decade, we've seen downtown revitalize, we've seen it become vibrant, and one of the things we have right now is we are pretty much at 100% occupied. If you see buildings that look empty or are used for storage or things like that, those buildings are not available for lease. And we actually have a waiting list of businesses looking to enter our downtown. Retail businesses, office space, restaurants, they want to be in Conway and there are not spaces available for them. So that is a bit of a problem for us because we don't have new construction going on in our downtown and we need more space. What will happen because of that is that we have a lot of generational businesses that are mom and pop businesses that have been able to enjoy the low rents offered in our downtown. Because we are at full occupancy, the rents are rising, and what that could do is push some of those mom and pops out of our downtown. Also something we don't want to see happen. So we desperately need more buildings in our downtown with more available space to keep our rents at a low rate and be able to maintain the mom and pops that we have. All of the empty storefronts that you see now on Main Street, which I think is the specific question, will have new tenants in the next few months. They're all spoken for. One of those we're very excited for is the new Teal store that has been discussed. Coastal's opening. We've got a new bookstore opening. Black Dog Running moved into the old game store. We've got Power Comics coming to downtown. We've got a lot of things happening on Main Street specifically, and we're really excited about that. Our other administrator for the group, Vince, has a follow-up question to Tina's question, and that deals with the grant monies that the city has gotten. It's a very complicated question and a very complicated answer. I'm going to try to really summarize some of the grants that we've got and really, without going, I'm going to do really broad brush here. We have one of the best grant writers in the state working for the city. She's received over $29 million in grants in the last few years, has a success rate of over 85%. And one of our biggest grants, a $12 million grant, is a combination of EDA funds and RIA money. It's allowing us to run a new sewer line that is a force main that will run from the Park Hill area all the way to the sewer treatment plant on New Road. It is a parallel line that will allow some redundancy in our system. It'll accommodate new growth both inside the city and outside the city, and it will greatly reduce the flood impacts on our sewer system. We have several other stormwater and flooding grants that are in the early stages of implementation. We've talked about the Chestnut Bay project for a long time. We actually have gotten a federal grant for that. We have a second grant for the McKeithen Outfall project. Both of these will create new stormwater facilities that are adjacent to Crabtree Canal. We're hoping both of them will improve water quality and reduce the chances of flash flooding in that area. We're very close to closing out the FEMA buyout grant that started with Hurricane Matthew in 2016. This grant allowed the city to purchase and demolish 42 flood-prone properties, mostly homes, and remove them from the height of harm's way in the flood zone. And we've also been very fortunate to have our elected state leaders assist us in receiving state funds for improving our city. The pickleball courts at Collins Park and repairs to Smith Jones Pool both would not have been possible without the assistance of Senator Luke Rankin. This year's state budget also included money for, among other things, a bike and walking trail that will connect the recreation center to El Bethel Road and expand the recreation fields. Again, thank you to our state delegation to help us with a lot of these projects that would not be possible without that money. We have a lot of other grants that we've received and we continue to work through, and our grants department of 2 people is to be commended for the work that they do. One caveat I want to give here is just because you've heard us apply for a grant or you've heard us receive a grant, a lot of these grants are very time consuming and take a long time to be able to implement. So just because you've heard we have one coming, don't expect that project to happen tomorrow. Know that it's coming, but it does take a long time to work through these projects, and a lot of these grants take a substantial amount of time and investment from the city. Philip asks a question about Highway 90, when are they going to widen it? And there's some follow-up parts to his question, but Highway 90 is not in the city limits. That being said, you've heard the discussions about Ride 4, I'm sure. The Ride 4 project has a lot of funding for the widening of Highway 90 prominent on that list. I would keep up with the county and the process as it goes forward to be able to stay abreast of information on Highway 90. Christine asks, why doesn't Conway have more job opportunities for 14 and 15-year-olds like back in the 90s? I'm not sure the city can do too much to help with this one. I will say the city hires a lot of summer workers every year, and we typically hire 16 and older. A lot of the reason for that is there are a lot of restrictions placed on hiring minors in general, and as you get below that 16-year age, they become more and more restrictive. There are opportunities out there, but you do have to look, and we encourage you to do that. I know a lot of our businesses are really looking for help, not only for the summer, but year long, and hopefully you'll be able to find some employment for your children. David asks the question, why doesn't Conway have more events and festivals? The population has grown so much that people have to go to other areas for events. Well, first off, we have a fantastic partners in the city. We've got the Conway Chamber of Commerce, Conway Downtown Alive, our Parks and Recreation Department. We put on a lot of fantastic events, but there's only so much these groups can do. So we encourage you, if you have a group that is interested in doing an event, pull a special event permit and do it. We'd love to have more people doing more events that take some of the burden off of the groups that are already doing so much for the city. Summer is really the only time that we don't have a lot of festival and events going on in the city, and it's because it's too hot for most events. That being said, the Conway Chamber of Commerce just wrapped up Riverfest. We had our first summer movie at the Terrace a few weeks ago. We had our first annual disc golf tournament at Smith Jones Park on June 19th. That same weekend, we had the multi-day Juneteenth festival downtown. We had an international food festival just in the last few weeks. Conway Parks and Recreation is offering free movies throughout the summer at the Terrace, the next one being July 14th, which is just, I think, tomorrow. And that's at the Terrace. And you won't see much more in the way of events in July and August. Again, it's just too hot. But September, October, November, December, we've got just a calendar full of events. If you've been here for more than a year, you know what our October looks like, and you know what our December looks like. It takes a year-long amount of planning to get those events happening, so we encourage you to jump on board, come to all the great things we have to do. And in the meantime, get out to our local restaurants that have live music with great food and great drinks, and enjoy our parks and river. It's a fantastic place to live, and there's always something going on in Conway, even if it's not a festival or organized event. Tessie asks, can you tell me if they're going to put sidewalks on Medlin? I'm concerned about people walking on the road. My husband is in a wheelchair. It's very dangerous for him to be in the road. I addressed a similar question to this in an earlier video. There will be some sidewalks added to Medlin with some of the new development that's coming, but earlier phases of Elmhurst and Midtown Village, those were permitted under a previous zoning ordinance that did not require sidewalks to be constructed. So adding sidewalks to Medlin Parkway in those areas is going to be very difficult. There's a lot of drainage right on the roadside. I would not anticipate seeing sidewalks in those areas soon. What we do require in all subdivisions in the city are sidewalks internal to the development. So you will see sidewalks on both sides of the street in almost every new subdivision in the city, and that includes those on Medlin Parkway. That will allow you to be able to circulate within your neighborhood, talk to your neighbors, and really create the community that we're looking for here in Conway. Kelly asked a question about Riverfest, and specifically asked if there could be more tables and chairs for people to sit and eat during that event. Riverfest is not a city event. It is put on by the Chamber of Commerce, so the details of that event are really controlled by the Chamber. Sounds like a great suggestion that I would recommend offering to them. But in the meantime, we do provide a lot of city support for that event, so if that was requested of us, it's certainly something that we could accommodate. Dave asks about the turning signals on Main Street, trying to help traffic flow. A lot of questions are asked about sequencing of lights. This, I think, is specifically about left turn lanes and how it impacts the flow of traffic on Main Street. Main Street and the lights are controlled by SCDOT, as well as light sequencing. We have no authority to make these changes. We do know that SCDOT is aware of the congestion on Main Street. Certainly, anytime there's a turning motion, it creates a conflict in traffic, which does slow traffic. But we just have too much volume on Main Street, which I think I've discussed in the past. We have a very limited number of pet crossings over the river, very limited number of roads that get toward the beach from Conway, and volume really is the cause of the traffic concerns. Janice asks about large semi-trucks driving in downtown, specifically between Main Street, Laurel, and Elm, causing traffic congestion on 4th and 3rd. And I've had this question from some other folks. I think there's someone named Tony in here asked the same question. Janice and Tony, I wish I had an easy answer to your question. Semis are allowed on 4th Avenue. Unless they're making a local delivery, they're not supposed to be downtown other than 4th Avenue. They're not allowed on Main Street. They're not allowed on 3rd or 2nd or Elm or Laurel. They're not allowed to cross the Main Street Bridge, yet every day, all day, they do. Over the last few months, we've written approximately 50 tickets for violations of the truck route without really making a dent in the number of violators. In fact, every time I record one of these videos, probably right now at the side of this window, that one truck will drive by and catch my eye. It drives me crazy too. Our bridge has a lifespan, and it's a very limited lifespan, and every truck driver that selfishly drives over the Main Street Bridge limits that lifespan a little bit further. We would love to have a solution to this problem. There just isn't a great one. We're going to continue to enforce our truck routes, and we ask that those driving through the city with big trucks follow the truck routes that are designated. Vince, who is the administrator of the Facebook group that helps us with these questions, asks another question here, and it's about the city's tax increase and specifically about our budget. What I'd like to do is in a future video, do the whole video, a whole discussion about our budget and the city budget, rather than try to squeeze this answer into a short period of time here. And we're gonna work on a special video just for that. We have, every year, especially with inflation, we try to work on cost of living increases for our employees. It's something that we really focus on, trying to make sure that our employees can work for us with a high morale and have their salaries be competitive with the private market so that we aren't continuously losing folks. When we have a cost of living increase for our employees, there is a cost associated with that we have to recoup. So what you'll typically see us do, and this is a council initiative, council sets the budget, but council has tied the revenue side of the city budget to that cost of living as well. So if the cost of living goes up by 5 or 6 or 7%, the revenues have to accommodate that too. So the tax increase this year was the same level of the cost of living increase that is determined by the Consumer Price Index. So the fees and things across the board went up by that same percentage. And again, we'll talk about this in more detail in a future video, but I just want to touch on that answer here. Charles asked a question about the enforcement of city ordinances, and I think this is a specific question as it relates to our Unified Development Ordinance, which is our zoning ordinance, and how that compares to the enforcement of regulations from an HOA. Specifically, he asks about parking of commercial vehicle on residential streets, recreational vehicles parked on streets or overnight in front yards. These are violations of our ordinance, and so you're correct. If we have violations that are out there, we need to enforce those uniformly, and it needs to be the city that enforces them, not necessarily the HOA. So the examples that were cited, parking of large commercial vehicles, RVs, etc., are violations of our zoning ordinance. We do not have zoning officers driving the streets of the city looking for violations. We do respond to complaints. And we will take action if needed. If you have not already done so, Charles, please report the violations to our planning department. If you already have, please check in with them again to report the status that it's still ongoing. And really, it takes a long time to enforce these rules. So just because you've reported it, don't assume that we are not doing anything about it. We have to give notice to the folks that are violating the rules and give them an opportunity to correct it. And then even if we've written a ticket, it takes several weeks to a month or more to get before the judge to be able to enforce that. And sometimes even then, we go to the judge, they write a fine or give more time. So it takes a lot longer than people understand to enforce some of these rules. And that's why we encourage people to work with their neighbors before they come to the city to enforce them. We don't want to write tickets to people in the city either. We will do it, and certainly we will do it uniformly if requested. Lana Hudson asks about the clay tennis courts. Specifically, she says, what happened to the grant money and USTA money and FEMA money to rebuild them in another location? We did receive some USTA money, and it wasn't even money, it was a design assistance grant. So the professionals at USTA helped us with the design of a clay court to replace the clay courts that were there. It was not cash, so it wasn't going to build anything, it was the design. The construction cost to rebuild the clay tennis courts would have been fiscally irresponsible of the city to implement. Our council considered them and decided against building them. Instead, they partnered with Horry County Schools to lease their new tennis courts and make them available to the public, which they are. Feel free to use them. FEMA also did not supply grant money to rebuild the courts. They gave us money to mitigate the damage that was there, which means not rebuild the courts there. Additionally, we were in partnership with the USTA, and they recommended against building additional clay courts in favor of hard courts. Between the courts offered at Collins Park, Smith Jones Park, and now at the high school, there are more than adequate numbers of tennis courts to fill the needs of our residents. The final question of the day also comes from Tina. What is going on at the corner of Oak and Maine after the building has been demolished? Any insight to what's going there? We have no plans submitted as of yet. We are just as curious as you are to see what will happen there. Anytime we see the private side remove a building that has been blight on the community, we're very happy for that. And we really are excited to see what will take its place.